Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're hitting 65, still working, and wondering what on earth to do about your healthcare, you are in the right place. We're going to demystify Medicare for those of you who want to keep working, but also want to keep absolute control over your future care. It's totally normal to wonder how your current employer benefits interact with Medicare, or when exactly you need to pull the trigger, and most importantly, how to avoid some seriously hefty lifelong penalties. So today, we're breaking down the official 2026 Medicare Resource Guide and the Medicare and New Handbook to give you crystal clear answers. And don't worry, no government decodering is required for this. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, decoding the Medicare alphabet. Second, working past 65. Third, timing your enrollment. Fourth, the big coverage choice. And finally, fifth, why flexibility matters. Let's dive right in. Section 1. Decoding the Medicare alphabet and making sense of all those letters. To start, let's decode the basic parts so you don't drown in the government's alphabet soup. First up is Part A. Think of this as your hospital insurance. It steps in when you're formally admitted as an inpatient, or if you need hospice care. This covers your stays in acute care hospitals, critical access hospitals, and it even covers short-term skilled nursing facility care after a qualifying hospital stay. And here's a massive perk. For most people, Part A is completely premium-free. Yep, you usually don't pay a monthly premium for it, as long as you or your spouse paid Medicare taxes while working for a certain amount of time. Next is Part B. This is your medical insurance. It handles all the everyday stuff: doctor visits, outpatient care, and durable medical equipment like wheelchairs and walkers. It also covers a really impressive range of preventative services, everything from your annual wellness visits to flu shots and cancer screenings. Now, unlike Part A, Part B does have a monthly premium, and that's actually based on your income. Together, Part A and Part B make up what we call Original Medicare. Then we have Part C, better known as Medicare Advantage. This is basically a bundled alternative that's offered by private Medicare-approved companies. If you decide to go with the Medicare Advantage plan, you absolutely still have Medicare, but you're getting your Part A, your Part B, and usually your prescription drug coverage all bundled together into one package through this private company rather than through the traditional government program. Finally, Part D. D is for drugs. Prescription drug coverage to be exact. And there's actually some really fantastic news here. Your out-of-pocket costs for covered Part D drugs are strictly capped at $2,100 starting in 2026. That is huge. Once you hit that cap, you won't have to pay a single copayment or coinsurance for covered Part D drugs for the rest of the calendar year. You can grab Part D through a standalone drug plan if you stick with Original Medicare, or, as we just mentioned, it might already be included if you choose a Part C Medicare Advantage plan. Moving right along to Section 2, working past 65, and how your employer coverage actually protects you. You know, a lot of people totally panic. They think they have to immediately sign up for Medicare the literal second they blow out the candles on their 65th birthday cake. But take a breath, you don't need to panic. If you're 65 and your employer has 20 or more employees, your group health plan actually pays first and protects you. In this scenario, your employer coverage is the primary payer. It pays your medical bills up to the limits of its coverage first, and Medicare just acts as a secondary payer. Because of this rule, it might actually be a really smart move to delay signing up for Part B while you still have health coverage from your current job. It saves you from paying those monthly Part B premiums until you actually decide to retire. Now listen closely to this one, because it's a very strict rule that trips a lot of people up. If you have a high-deductible health plan at work and you contribute to a health savings account, or HSA, you are not eligible to make contributions to that HSA after you have Medicare, period. You have to stop your HSA contributions up to 6 months before you apply for Medicare. Why 6 months? Well, because premium-free Part A coverage actually applies retroactively for up to 6 months from the date you sign up. So you really have to plan that final HSA contribution carefully. Section 3. Timing your enrollment. Let's talk about special windows and those strict penalties. When the paychecks finally stop and your workplace insurance ends, a very, very important clock starts ticking. You have an exact 8-month window called a special enrollment period to enroll in Part A and B after your employment or your coverage ends, whichever happens first. During this exact window, you can sign up for Medicare without facing a late enrollment penalty. But please hear me on this. COBRA or retiree health coverage does not count as current employer coverage. Seriously, do not let COBRA lull you into a false sense of security and cause you to miss this 8-month window. Because here is the brutal reality. If you miss that window, your Part B premium will go up 10% for each full 12 months that you could have had Part B but just didn't sign up. And this is not just a one-time fine. No way. You are going to pay this penalty added right onto your standard monthly premium for as long as you have Part B, literally for the rest of your life. So knowing your enrollment window is absolutely vital to protecting your hard-earned retirement savings. Section 4, the big coverage choice. We are at the fork in the road. So now we reach the ultimate fork in the road for your retirement. This is where you decide exactly how your healthcare is going to be managed moving forward. And honestly, it's one of the most critical choices you'll make for your future. With Original Medicare, you have total freedom to see any provider in the U.S. that accepts Medicare. You don't need to lock down a primary care doctor, and for the most part, you don't even need a referral to see a specialist. You're in the driver's seat. Medicare Advantage, on the other hand, operates a lot more like those HMO or PPO plans you're probably used to from your working years. Those private plans typically require you to use their specific, curated network of doctors and hospitals, plus you might need to get prior authorization or approval before the plan will actually cover certain services. Which brings us to Section 5, why flexibility matters and taking true control of your care. Look, as we age, our health needs can get incredibly complex very fast. You might find yourself wanting to seek out top specialists in another state, or maybe you just want to travel across the country to visit your grandkids without worrying about your insurance. Or maybe you just want to avoid jumping through administrative hoops when you get sick. The official handbook guarantees this fact. With Original Medicare, you can use any doctor or hospital that takes Medicare anywhere in the U.S. If you develop a serious condition and the absolute best doctor for it happens to be 3 states away, Original Medicare lets you make the appointment and just go. There are no out-of-network fees because, well, there is no network. The entire country is your network. That is what ultimate control over your own healthcare decisions actually looks like. So how do you protect yourself financially while keeping that ultimate control? Well, Original Medicare doesn't cover everything. You generally have to pay a 20% coinsurance for Part B services, and there's no yearly limit on what you can spend out of pocket. That's where a Medigap policy comes in, also known as Medicare Supplement Insurance. These are standardized policies designed to cover those out-of-pocket costs like your copayments, coinsurance, and deductibles. By pairing Original Medicare with a Medigap policy, you get immense financial predictability. But here is the best part. You get that financial protection without ever giving up the freedom to direct your own care. You still retain all the power to see any Medicare doctor without a referral, while the Medigap policy just quietly steps in to pay the remaining costs that Original Medicare leaves behind. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to ask yourself a question. How much control do you truly want over your health in your golden years? Are you comfortable operating within a restricted network of doctors, or do you demand the unwavering freedom to make your own medical decisions anywhere in the country? Understanding how your employer coverage interacts with Medicare, knowing your strict enrollment timelines, and grasping the vast difference between Original Medicare with a Medigap policy versus a restricted network plan, that's how you make sure you're fully prepared. Take some time to plan your Medicare fork in the road accordingly, and you'll step into retirement with total confidence.